So you've decided it's time to learn the fast castle build order for competitive Age of Empires 2 multiplayer so you can visit your opponents with Castle Age units while they're still thinking about which board to take first? Well, good news, because you're in the right place. I'll show you how to do the build order, what its strengths and weaknesses are, and which civilizations are particularly good at it. And as always, we'll do it in less than 10 minutes. Let's go! So to mention right off the bat, the longer the build order, the more variation there can be. This particular one is meant to be a generic fast castle into units build. You can modify it to be a fast castle into boom or fast castle into an early castle drop, which we'll do in future videos. For now, let's get the build order chart going and walk through it. As always, we're picking Byzantines on Arabia to not have any eco bonus impacting this build, which means you can be even faster depending on the civ. The beginning of Dark Age looks identical to my fast feudal build because I like to keep things easy, so I recommend you check that out first if you're a beginner, because that video goes into a bit more depth why we use our first 18 villages the way we do. The first 6 vills go on food, so we can have a sustained villager production in the TC. As always, make sure to use your sheep or pigs for scouting, but always send one back in time to not have idle villager time. In this case, we find our deer pretty early, so we push those in right away. Remember, speed and value from deer and boar is faster than berries or sheep, so we prioritize those, and it means you can keep sending your sheep around for scouting longer, which gives you an even better idea of what your base looks like. We want to find our closest wood line, our 2 boars, and our sheep at the very least at the beginning. Next up, we send only 2 villages on wood at the start, because all the wood we need will be for the 3rd house and a mill after we've placed our lumber camp. Remember to always place your lumber camp in the center of the wood line with no gap, since we chop wood pretty quickly as opposed to gold or stone where it takes a bit longer, so you can leave a tile space. The rest is very standard. You have 6 on sheep, 2 on wood, and then you start bringing in boars, deers and sheep. Whatever you can get your hands on. Remember, goal number 1 in Dark Age is to get enough food so you can advance, and as always, make sure that you don't have more than 2 or 3 carcasses under the TC to avoid unnecessary rotting.
It's true.
And also, obviously, don't have idle TC time or idle villager time. And remember to build your house, the 3rd one, on the way to your forward boar so that it becomes part of your wall already. Now I know, this is tons of multitasking here, and I have a great video on some hotkeys and general beginner tips. I recommend you check that out. Unfortunately, there is no way around hotkeys. While we increase our villager count on food here, we're going to speed it up a bit and talk about the goals of this build order. The big number 1 is obviously to reach Castle Age as soon as possible, however, not at all cost, because we also want enough resources to be able to 1. Build a blacksmith and market in Feudal Age, number 2. Have constant villager production out of our TC to have idle time in Dark, Feudal and early Castle Age at 0. Number 3, have the stable ready once we hit Castle Age, because we're gonna go for knights in this example. And number 4, to constantly pump out knights out of that one stable. All of this together is gonna be super strong, because you're hitting your opponent with Castle Age units while they might still be on their way up, or haven't even clicked up to Castle Age yet. There are obviously a few different Castle Age builds out there, but personally I like this one because it gives you the option to switch to a fast feudal all the way up until 18 pop roughly. And that can be very valuable as you're intaking new information about the map, your opponent, the civilizations, so it's good to have that flexibility. Longer builds obviously also mean a bigger potential for mistakes, and you can see some imperfections here on screen every now and then, but I think it's good to actually have them in your build, because that means you have buffer in case something goes wrong, and let's be honest, something always goes wrong. Now focusing back on the screen, this is where we start to differ from the fast feudal build. We're building an additional house since we're adding more pop space in Dark Age already. We're going to go all the way up to 24 pop, so we need this additional house. What we'll do with that additional villager count is to send 5 more on wood, since we will need farms. Why do we need farms? Because we can't collect all the food we need from hunts and berries to go up to Feudal Age, Castle Age, keep up the vill production and produce knights, so we start earlier on those farms. Also, we're going to have to build quite a few buildings in the next 5 minutes, so we need wood production. And then after that, the final 2 villages, so pop space 23 and 24, will go on gold so that we can afford loom and ultimately Castle Age in a couple of minutes. Now, for the timing of loom, the choice really is yours. The smoother way would be to do it in Feudal Age, but the safer way to do it is in Dark Age, since it adds HP to your villages to survive all that Feudal Age aggression you might get and the starting opponent harassing your building villages. The reason I say that it's smoother in Feudal Age is because, as you'll realize in a second, we won't have enough wood to place our blacksmith and market in parallel right away. And that means the construction time for the 2 is going to be a little longer. And remember, one of our goals is to never have our RTC idle. and that means we have to add loom to the queue so that we have enough time to build the blacksmith first and then the market. And now you can already see it, the final 2 Dark Age villages go to gold, and then we queue up Feudal Age, we queue up loom and another 2 vills. You might as well get that out of the way now because you have a lot of work to do. We have now clicked up to Feudal Age, and this is where the great rebalancing comes in right as your hunt will run out. So we sent 5 villages on berries to increase the number to 6. We also increased the number of villages on our lumber camp from 7 to 9. We further sent 4 villages on farms. Here you can see I'm only doing 3. This is because the 4th one is missing a little bit of wood, probably because of the guy taking a hike earlier without authorization. Besides that, we send another 2 villages on stragglers, one of which builds a house and then moves on to a farm. And the other one stays on wood, because that's going to be the person who builds the barracks and the stable when we click up to Castle Age later. Now, let's speed this up a bit. There's not much else to see here while we wait for hitting Feudal Age. And we've already queued up loom and 2 vills, so we are ready. The 2 villages that we have queued up will go on stragglers and ultimately on farms, but it's important to manage your wood balance carefully now. Take 2 villages from berries and build the blacksmith and then the market. As I've mentioned earlier, we don't have enough wood to actually do these 2 in parallel right away, so it has to be sequential, which is not ideal from a construction time perspective, but that's why we have loom queued up in Feudal Age. This way our TC is busy and we can build those 2 buildings. Once the market is up, we're also going to sell 100 stone. We don't technically need that to click up to Castle Age, but it will come in handy for our night production, because right now we only have 2 on gold, which is not enough to sustain night production. But as we ramp that up in Castle Age, this little buffer will help us get through that time and have 0 stable idle time. Now, in terms of clicking up to Castle Age, it might be that you're missing 10-20 food or something, so just do a quick force drop with your food villages and you should be able to click up to Castle Age around minute 12, which, hey, that's pretty good. And we have a functioning economy with it. As we're on our way up to Castle Age, it's important to immediately take that one villager that was chopping the straggler tree and have him build a barracks, a stable and a house, because remember, once we hit Castle Age, we want night production to start immediately. The other thing we'll do on our way up to Castle Age, probably in the second half of it loading up, is we want to get the wood and gold upgrade, because you'll see that food is not really a bottleneck anymore, but gold and wood will be for a while, so I would definitely prioritize those over the food upgrade. The other thing is start walling up your base further as needed, and I recommend again to take villagers from berries for that, because food is not the bottleneck. You might start having to wall earlier, by the way, depending on the strategy of your opponent, so count that in if you see any delays in your uptime. And other than that, we have a bit of time to kill now, so you might as well subscribe to Toaster226 YouTube channel so you don't miss future content. Let's quickly do some maths on our way up to Castle Age. So the remaining 2 goals are to produce villages and knights constantly out of 1 TC and 1 stable. That means we need food and gold. For the food side of things, you already know that keeping a TC running requires roughly 6 villages on food. Keeping a stable running equally needs another 6 villages on food, so we need a grand total of 12 villages on food to keep it all running. Luckily, we're building up a bit of a buffer as we go up to Castle Age, so you'll see food isn't very tight to begin with, and we have a bit of buffer also to use on upgrades if you want to. The other thing is we need gold, and knights are pretty expensive and require 6 villages on gold and the Feudal Age upgrade for the gold mining camp. So right now you see we only have 2, and that's okay because we sold the 100 stone to give us a bit of a buffer, but that means the first 4 villages coming out of the TC and Castle Age all have to go to gold so we can keep this running. Now, while we watch this unfold, let's talk about weaknesses and civilizations. Obviously, this is a longer build, and I already mentioned this means there's more room for error. Also, having a longer build means that your opponent has more chance to interfere with it. The other risk, even if you made it all the way to Castle Age, is that your opponent might outboom you, so it is instrumental that your early Castle Age pressure is high and you use those knights pretty much immediately. In terms of civilizations, it's fairly obvious again, we're looking for any civilization that has either an eco bonus that hits in Dark or Feudal Age already to speed things up. So a couple of examples here would be Burgundians, where upgrades are cheaper and available 1 age earlier, or the Vietnamese, where some upgrades cost no wood and are researched 100% faster. The other thing that we're looking for is any bonus that makes the unit you're going for stronger, faster, or cheaper to produce. An example here would be the Berbers, where their stable units cost 15% less, or the Franks, where your cavalry has 20% HP more from Feudal Age and their knights have +2 line of sight. And there you have it, the fast castle build order in less than 10 minutes. As always, I'm super curious to hear down in the comments which civilizations you love using for it, how you would tweak it for your purposes, and which units you are trying to pump out early. Until then, thanks for watching and I'll see you around.